Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Cheat Codes. My name is Ed Brialt, host of Marketing Cheat Codes and CMO at Aprimo. I'm super excited today to have somebody who has an amazing career arc, I would put it at that, as well as some really interesting missions, both in the office and outside the office. Jasmin Guthmann. Jasmin, welcome to the pod.
Thanks so much for having me. Ed. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely. And we have to start with you, of course. And I see some race maps behind you right now. And those are triathlon maps, race
That
courses.
is correct. That is correct.
So, yeah, tell me a little bit more. We're going to get into the conversation, but triathlon, swim, bike, run, all these disciplines. Okay, there's three. There's transitions in between. So there's three, but there's more disciplines that are unknown. There's diet, there's recovery, there's nutrition, there's fuel. There's so many dimensions to putting together that race. There's so many parallels into the world of marketing as well that we'll get into. Tell me about how did you get started in triathlon?
Thank you so much for asking. And it's so exciting. It's such a fantastic sport. It's also why I love those race maps. And as my background, it's actual pictures on the wall. It's such a great way to remember, and it's such a great conversation starter. And it is a creative way. It's not just putting a medal up on a wall, which is what you would be your first guess, right? You get a medal at the finish line, you put it somewhere, but then it basically starts collecting dust. And who wants that? But here's a creative expression. I got into triathlon really by mistake almost. I was running at the time, and I met someone who was scheduled to do the Ironman in Frankfurt. So that is one of the most popular races. And to me, at that point in time, which was almost 15 years ago, that person almost seemed like a god, right? There's so many. I mean, how can you imagine you swim 3.8 kilometers, not lanes or meters, right. Kilometers. And then you hop on your bike and you ride 180 kilometers, which is really far. And to finish that off, you now still have to run a full marathon, 26.2 miles of running. So to me, that was unheard of. I never saw myself doing something as crazy as that. So what I did is I figured, you know what, maybe there's a smaller version of this gigantic feat that maybe I could do. So I started reading up, and sure enough, there is what they call an everybody's triathlon here in Germany. Okay. And there's
the sprint distance, there's the Olympic distance, and what's everybody's buddy?
See, and that is so fun because that is even shorter. So there's the official distances, which is sprint, Olympic, half Ironman, and Ironman. So that's where stuff starts getting real serious. But there's also almost a triathlon of sorts, which is a 500 meter swim. So, very doable. A 20 kilometer bike ride and a 5 kilometer run. So all in all, it takes an hour and a half. It's nothing crazy. It's actually something that, like the name implies, everybody can do. If you have some base level of fitness and you're not a couch potato, that is doable. So I read up, I found one in the area, and I went, and I just I almost drowned. I had trouble getting on a bike, finding my bike in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So to your point, there's so many things. And if you don't know any of them, if you're a newbie, you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Plus add to that here's all the other participants, and some of them look like the most professional athletes, even on the very short distances. And you're like, oh my goodness, I've borrowed a bike. I brought a swimsuit from back in the day. I have a pair of running shoes, but that's about it. Yeah. And here's professionals arriving at the starting line. So, and there's always also that mental component of you could add that as a as a discipline as well. And then you just progress through the distances. So you go from trial to sprint, you survive sprint, you go from sprint to Olympic, and so on and so forth. And usually at every step, it takes you a while, right? You want to be comfortable with the distance and with the amount of training that you need to put in.
Yeah.
And then, some progress till King's class, which is Ironman. And I did, but it took me 5 years, for the record. It's, I was on the half distance and I was like, just thinking about, I need to do this twice.
Yeah.
Again, right back to back was like, no, are you kidding me? And then eventually and I think here's another great parallel to our profession. Not everything is rational. Not everything can be explained. Data cannot do everything for you. The data very clearly showed that I was capable of doing a long distance triathlon, but my mind was in disbelief.
Yeah.
So what needed to happen at some point, and thankfully it did, is you need to take that leap of faith. You have to decide. It's a very conscious decision. Okay, I don't know if I can do this, but I want to. And then that changes everything, because your decision now sets the course of action. And now very automatically, almost, at least for me, that everything falls into place. So I know I want to do this Ironman in August of year X. So you just start calculating backwards. Like with any product launch or campaign that you're launching or whatever it is that you're working towards, you set the goal and then you start working backwards. And then all you need to do, quote unquote, is stick to your plan.
Yeah.
And then, miracles happen.
I love that. There's so many things we could talk about, so many parallels right there.
Mm-hmm.
What you were just hitting on right now is there's you see this idea of an Ironman full distance, and somebody who does that, it looks like a superhero. You demystify it over time, and you pick the goal. It's a big goal, big, hairy, audacious goal. I want to do that full distance Ironman, but then you create your steps to get there. You get your mindset right, and then of course, you couldn't just go and do the full distance. You had to put your fitness, you had to periodize your fitness and training over time to get there. And then you sort of go through the, I'll call it the pilot, or the demystifying smaller race, because you're still putting the race together. It's not the full endurance, but it's like you still need to get up early. You have you have to go to sleep early, because you're probably getting up at like 3:30, 4 a.m. because these things start at 7 a.m. mostly. And you've got to have all your equipment together, your wetsuit, your cap, your goggles, your bike, your water bottles, you have to make sure your bike's tuned up and the brakes are going to work, and that it's proper. Your chain is in good condition, and then you need to set everything up sometimes the night before, and then you're looking at the transitions and you're mapping the routes, and there's all kinds of cheat codes you're looking for in there too. And then maybe you drive the course, or you look at what you're about to have to go through. And then, there's a T2, right? Transition 2, which is where you get off the bike and you put your shoes on and you go on the run. When we think in terms of marketing, or we think about plans and strategies, we've got big goals, but if we break them down, and I want to ask you about something, visualization. How important is visualizing what we just talked about, from start line to finish line, where your hands are above your head and you're feeling good? How important is visualization in the race, as well as in achieving professional goals?
Excellent point. Visualization is one of the most important hacks, if you want to call it that, but it really is a mental hack, right? For one, what it does in advance is it allows you to see yourself as someone that maybe you're not yet. So here's working towards manifestation of your goals. And that is important because once you've seen yourself in that new environment or at the finish line, it's really hard to unsee that. And it has a really strong pull, right? You want to get to that finish line because you actually have a really good feeling, a sense of what it will likely be like. It will be totally different, that I can tell you. It never is like you imagine it to be, but that doesn't take anything away from it. And that is a very powerful tool in your toolkit. While you're out on a course, you can draw on the same principles. And that becomes even more important the harder the day gets. So, you show up, everyone shows up, hopefully prepared to the best of their abilities, but that does not mean that everything is going to go as you envisioned it or, as you would have liked, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You never know what cards you will be dealt. And what matters is how well you play your cards. Everyone is being dealt cards. And it really boils down to how do you handle that? Do you handle that well? And if you can visualize and really put yourself in a good mental space, that is the biggest competitive advantage that you can have, because not very many people are able to do that when the going gets tough. As long as the sun's shining and everything's great and you feel awesome, not a differentiator. As soon as things start getting hard, you would be surprised how many people throw in a towel, and because they cannot make themselves stay in a mental place that is positive and that I can do this. And the example that I can give you is, for one, I always had a sticker on my top bar that said, "Magic doesn't happen inside your comfort zone." And it had those two bubbles. It's a really nice, and even just glancing at it from the corner of my eye, I was like, that reminded me, and it just served as a reminder. Yeah, it's gonna get tough at some point, and that's okay. All you need to do is keep pushing. And if you can manage to do that, and if you need some little support, and maybe that is a sticky note on your desktop or on your laptop or on your fridge, then that's perfect. That's all you need sometimes. That little sticky that reminds you that it's not, if it was easy, anybody could do it.
Absolutely. There's going to be headwinds that you're going to have to push into. The water's going to get choppy. You might have gone into the race with a nagging injury and you have to put that out of your mind. There's so much from visualizations. There's so much you need to put in your mind, and then you've got to put things out of your mind and get past that, those points of adversity. And it's how you operate in the moment that really matters. And have there been times when there's always that self-doubt, or you just want to throw in the towel, like you said? What are some of the mental frameworks you've used? Are there more like mental cheat codes you've used in a race or in business where when the going got tough, thinking through and having the persistence to push past the whatever that obstacle might be?
Yes, two immediately come to mind. One is in the race setting, but it can also be applied to the business setting, is boxing, in the sense of box your efforts, box your time, but also if you have a rocky road ahead of you, only think about the 10 meters in front of you and the 10 meters to your back. So what can I do in this very small, very very limited space, but also very safe space, right? I know I can see exactly what I'm heading into. I know what I've just come through. So stay inside your box. Don't worry about what's going to be happening in 10 kilometers or in 20 or in 30. Control, control the controllables. So make sure that wherever you are in your project, on your project plan, on your campaign, make sure that whatever you're doing right now you're doing it to the best of your abilities. Never lose sight of where you're heading, but also don't fret about it if it's not perfectly clear. Do the best you can with what you have, where you are in that moment, and then that will inevitably get you to where you're wanting to go. So I think that's a super powerful framework that I'm using all the time, because it's so easy, and it's so easy to get hung up, especially in these times where everything is more, faster, more channels, omni-channel, the gazillions of messages hitting you every day. And
Yeah.
it's so important that you are able to focus on the one thing at hand while not losing sight of what's really important.
I love that. I love that boxing mindset, because if you think about it all at once, you'll be overwhelmed and you'll shut down. You really have to think about the scenario, the situation that you're currently in, almost compartmentalizing that situation. And then as you get out of one situation into the next, that will get you through the entire race. And when you get to the end, what happens? When you finish a race, how do you feel typically? What does your mind go through?
Well, you know what? You're exhausted. That's for sure. And here's fun fact. Doing any race distance for the first time is magic, because you go in with no expectations. Every second, third, fourth, fifth, 27th race is not going to be the same, because you're always racing against yourself. You have a benchmark now.
Yeah.
And creating a benchmark is something very different to comparing yourself to a benchmark, even if it's your own. So the first race always has, and the first campaign, whenever you're breaking new ground, that has a certain magic to it. But many times we don't realize that in a moment. So you arrive at that finish line for the first time, you finish that project, you create that wonderful asset, and it doesn't feel as great as you thought. I was expecting to turn into freaking Wonder Woman when I crossed that finish line. Right. And I arrived there and I was super happy, but I was also super exhausted. And it was kind of maybe due to the expectation of it being, I don't know, something super crazy. It was almost average. And only, a few hours later, when you realize what you've accomplished, that's when a very hard to describe, but super warm feeling of accomplishment fills you up, right? And it's like, oh my goodness, I actually really did this. And then it just keeps growing and it makes you happy and happier and happier. And then for weeks you feed off that happiness, which is so much cooler than just one single finish line moment. But I think that's, it's sometimes hard for people because they expect the big bang and to turn into some superwoman or Superman, and that unfortunately never happens.
Do you find that every finish line leads to another start line? Like you finish the race, maybe you went so deep, and I've seen folks, finish races and they lay down and they're in pain and they get up, they need help getting back up, and they say, I'm never going to do that again. But then they're signing up for another race very
next day,
quickly after.
Yeah. That is super common. Super common. And I've seen it myself. I've done it myself. It takes me a bit longer. I usually do recover for a few weeks, and I'm like, I don't want to have to do anything other than splash in a pool, and eat all the food. But I think it's like in business, we never stop. Until you die, you don't stop. If you're a passionate person, if you're passionate about what you do, how could you potentially ever stop? The only question is, what is the next most exciting thing that I can go and have a stab at? And who do I meet along the way? Who points me in some other direction that I never thought of? But hey, maybe let's try this crazy thing over here. So it like in life, I don't think the pursuit of what's possible ever ends unless you burn out, and then you would need to ask yourself, why that is, or you find the next thing that excites you so much that you're willing to put in all the hours and all the effort and do it again.
I love how important you made recovery, physical recovery, mental recovery. Is that a survival? I feel like that's a survival mechanism to sustain our lives. Would you agree in our careers?
Oh, interesting. It just dawned on me that I apply the same strategy in business all the time, because what I've seen so many times is people burn out because they never do, right? They have hardly finished the last project and they're already on to the next three. And that will work for a while, but it's not sustainable. Also in business, what I do, if I have a real life example, we have a thought leadership conference coming up in May. So I know that March, April, May are going to be crazy, workload crazy, stress crazy, but it's worth it because I'm super excited and passionate about putting it on. I want it to be the best thought leadership conference that it can potentially become. Now, at the same time, I've already filed for paid leave the week after, because I know that I will be, my brain will be fried.
That is a cheat code, folks. Plan for it.
And it's so easy. It's all you have to do is plan for it now while you're still sane.
And it's there for you. It's there to protect you no matter what happens. You've got that recovery period.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's you never realize it until other people point you to it. It's something that I do very regularly. Whenever there's a big project that comes to an end, I take a few days off. And everyone's like, Jasmin, that is such a smart thing to do. And I'm like, yeah, let's all do it, because we'll all do better work. We'll all be better humans, and we won't be as stressed out with our families, with our friends. That's also something that is really important to me. I used to be someone who tried to keep family and friends and work very separate, right? Yeah. I was like, no, mix and match. No. That is not possible, because I bring my emotions to work. Work has an effect on me. So I bring emotions to my friends and my family. So
much power in emotions.
Totally. And you cannot deny that. You can try to sort of, gloss over that, but again, won't work very long. So to me, that's super important, that all of these components are in balance. And you can only do that if you spend quality time with the people who matter most to you.
Yeah. I love that. The mindset of the multidisciplined triathlete, the mindset of the multidisciplined professional, it's the entirety of your existence is allowed. You give yourself permission to be your whole self in those situations. Respect them, know the boundaries, know your capabilities, know I can push myself harder. I've got more in me. I got more in the tank. Or I got to stop. I'm on the verge of injury. You can see how far you can push yourself with those mental models that you've shared. Those are some amazing mental cheat codes. I don't think we've ever gotten to these mental cheat codes on this pod before. That was cool. I wasn't even expecting to get into this level of detail. But wow, you've got to be very intentional. It sounds like you're very intentional with a lot of things. And you talked about a thought leadership conference. I want to get into your career arc a little bit. So you're at Contentstack right now. Tell me about your role there. Tell me about Contentstack.
Well, Contentstack is a content experience platform. So really a software as a service. Started out as a headless CMS core component of what we call composable architectures these days.
Yeah.
And we actually pioneered what is now being called composable before it was even a thing. There was no label attached to it. We saw a pain, and that was how do I organize my content in a way? How do I connect my content to other parts of the system in a way that will actually make my life easier and not harder, because things start breaking and you push this button here and then this crazy thing happens over there. So that's really how we set out as a company. And we've always kept the customer at heart. And that sounds so cheesy, but that I think is also one of those eternal rules, really. If you want to be the best version of yourself, you need feedback, and you need to listen to what your customers actually need versus what you think they need. And that's true whichever vertical or industry or company you work for. So
Absolutely.
having that constant feedback loop and really caring about what the customers want and need in order to challenge the status quo. Think about all the brands that are still today stuck on monolithic legacy systems.
There's a lot of them out there.
There's a lot of them
Yeah.
out there. And many of them are not first movers or not even second movers. And they're bought into very expensive, very unforgivable systems that it's not easy to say, hey, let's rip and replace this SAP thing over here.
Yeah.
Not going to work. So we need to acknowledge that reality. But what we can do and what we try to do is, let's start small. Start small steps, short swim, not a long swim.
Yeah.
Pick the one thing that is most painful to you today. Oh, payments. Okay. Then how about we start with a POV on payments, and we build for you, we connect for you what needs to be connected. And then let's look at the data and let's prove to a degree that this works better for you this way than if you had kept it on your old premises. And if that's the case, okay, great. Let's look at the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so little by little, step by step, we want to enable customers to go on that journey and go on that journey safely. And we won't let them fail. That is what Contentstack does differently, I think, from a lot of vendors. Is such an ugly word. I don't ever want to use it, because you don't want a vendor, you want a partner, right?
Yeah.
So, we have a program called Care Without Compromise that is really special, because what it says is, hey, dear customer, the one thing that every customer is afraid of in a composable architecture is, what if something breaks and I don't even know where the problem is? Now, do I have to call all 27 companies that are involved in my tech stack? And what Care Without Compromise promises is that you can just call us and hand us a problem, and we'll figure out what the root issue is, and we'll have it fixed, and we'll come back to you with the solution, and not, pointing at each other going, oh no, it's not a Contentstack problem. Oh no, it's not. It's an Aprimo problem. Oh no, it's a name whatever third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh company you would like problem. No, let's all come together and provide the best solution possible for the customer. And then, that will pay off in the long run.
I love that. And I feel like that concept was created before Contentstack was created. I get the feeling that the company was was born with that idea in mind.
Yeah. And it's really true to values, right? The Contentstack very much operates on a value-based framework. We do the right thing when no one is watching. And that the beauty in that is here's another hack. The beauty if you install that in a company is you don't need specific instructions for case A or case B because the principle is universally applicable. Do the right thing when nobody's watching. Should I call my customer when I see something is going wrong? Should I offer a discount for something or whatever it is that's coming up? If you look at the principles that are outlined, that enables everyone in a company to make a decision and one that is good for both the customer and the company.
I love that. I also want to talk about your the leadership role at the MACH Alliance, where this idea of composable is also in there. For folks who are listening, what is the MACH Alliance? And I know there's a manifesto, there's a mission there. What's the mission of it? And demystify the MACH Alliance a little bit for us.
Absolutely, with pleasure. The MACH Alliance is a nonprofit that was founded in March 2020, so not that long ago, and it strives to really advocate for best of breed composable architecture to enable businesses to future-proof their business model. That's a mouthful. What it actually is and does is, by now, it started out with 5 companies, Vaultec, Contentstack, Amplience, EPAM, and I attempted to say Accenture. So those 5 were in a mix from the beginning. And it was really not clear whether that would be a success. So 5 companies came together and said, hey, we think the world needs more of this. Mm-hmm. Let's put all our differences aside and let's double down on the word that we want to spread.
That's super powerful when you put your differences aside.
And that to this day is the beauty of the MACH Alliance. The Alliance has grown to 75 plus members, and that's companies in a mix from AWS and Google. So really big companies have joined as of late. Accenture is in a mix. Capgemini is in a mix. So we have big consultancies by now, but there's also startups. There is solution implementers. There is all kinds of vendors. So anything really that you can think of that is part of a composable architecture or ecosystem has a place in the MACH Alliance. The one rule is you cannot Mac wash yourself into the Alliance, right? There's a few companies who are doing a lot of legacy things and now, as of late, have started composable offerings. And I think we'll see much, much more of that. But that, of course, is not the key to entering the MACH Alliance. The MACH Alliance really focuses on, MACH composable needs to be at the core of your business. And maybe just because we use MACH all the time, because to us it's such a common term, but MACH stands for microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. So, and often the question is, what's the difference between MACH and headless? Well, headless is just one of the pieces of MACH. MACH is broader and deeper and enables you to do more with your tech stack. So that is a super compelling promise. And we've been blown away by the number of companies and the size and the reputation of companies that are now members of the Alliance. Makes us very proud. And what's so exciting is people from all of these companies, incredibly smart people, get together And they all leave their company hat at the door, myself included. So I arrive as head of corp comms at Contentstack, but I enter the room and I'm the VP of the MACH Alliance. And I will advocate for whatever is best for the alliance, whether that's, voting on who's to become the next member, or coming up with a marketing strategy for the alliance, which is what I started with, creating the brand, creating something new, igniting that fire, that spark that gets everyone excited. How many times in your career do you have an opportunity to do that? But now, fun fact, that's all, we are all volunteers. None of us are being paid to do this. All that happens is our companies say, hey, yeah, you can spend a few hours following your dreams.
It's fueled by passion.
Fueled by passion, exactly. And I'm just off a call with one of the fantastic ladies that we're starting a Women in MACH initiative
Amazing.
that we started in August, and we're going to really double down on that now. And that call with her just gave me so much energy, because here's people who, on top of their already super demanding day jobs, decide that there is something that they're passionate about. And they're willing to put in the time and the effort and say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm super busy, but guess what? I can carve out 30 minutes. I can carve out. Yes, I do want to be in charge of this. Let's get together and figure this out. So that is incredibly beautiful, and I'm incredibly proud to be part of that. And I'm one of those pushy people. I know some people hate me for that, right? I'm like, okay, here's the 3 things that are the most exciting. How can we get that going?
Yeah.
Super cool.
I love that. Yeah. Women in MACH.
Yes.
I love that. Talk to me about, I've heard you speak about this, and there's some cheat codes in gender equity that we all need to be thinking about.
Oh yeah. And first off, it's so sad that we have to talk about this, right? Because we all wish that in 2023 we wouldn't need a Women in MACH thing.
We're gonna talk about it until we're better.
And that's the point. And that's when you ask me how long do you envision this to run, until we don't need it anymore. I would be super happy if it's not needed in 5 years. I kind of have a feeling we'll be around, but maybe the cost is going to be broader. So what we started out with is the tech industry is notoriously horrible in terms of gender equity, right? There's only 11% of the workforce is female to start with. Little to none ever make it to managing positions or leadership positions. Really, really, really tough environment. And what we as women, many times me, myself included, never realize is that most of the times we're the only women in the room. But it's so normal for us that we just never occurred to me that was the case until we did a Women in MACH event in Madrid in August last year, September. And we invited 100 super strong women from the tech space, just because we felt, you know what, we all feel so isolated sometimes, and we all think it's just us. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. That's usually what happens. And a small group of people said, you know what, let's bring everyone together and talk openly about it. So we got 100 women in a room. And what then happened can only be described as magic. The first woman got on stage, Sonia Curl, then president of the MACH Alliance, and just very openly talked about how exhausting it is at times to be a single working mom of 3, to want a leadership position and to hold a leadership position at the same time, juggling all the balls and trying to only drop the rubber ones.
Yeah.
And that sparked everyone in the room to open up and share. And funny enough, everyone's like, oh, same here. I felt that way. Oh, and yes, I've seen this happen. And oh my gosh, really, yes, I am many times the only woman in the room. Funny enough, we had a few, what we call male allies in the room also, because
Right.
you never want just the underrepresented minority. If you look at the underrepresented minority, whichever one you're looking at, by themselves, and you ask them to lift themselves up out of the hole that they're sitting in, that is just insane, even thinking about it. So we made sure that we had a few male allies on site. And here's the fun thing. Great guy, love him to pieces, takes me to the side and it's like, Jasmin, I feel awkward. And I'm like, why? Because to me, it never occurred. You can see where this is going. And he's like, well, you know what? This is the first time in my life that I'm outnumbered. There's 5 guys and 95 women in here. I am so sorry. I had no idea until how it felt for you until now.
Wow.
And that is such a powerful experience, and such a powerful experience for him, but then for him to share that with his peers and to create that, awareness of how it feels. Here's the emotion component again, right? Because we can talk about it all day long. Everyone will nod and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But until you experience it for yourself, it's just not as strong. And there is a few very easy things that we all can do, and they don't require money or, even a lot of effort. My favorite example is always, if you're asked to speak on a panel, insist that the panel is 50-50, male, female. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very easy. Doesn't require you to do anything but speak up. If you're invited to go to a conference, bring a friend, a female friend, to make sure that we all have more representation in the room. And with these small hacks, that goes such a long way. If you're putting on a conference, make sure that your speakers are 50-50, male, female. That is a bit more work. I will admit that, because that's what we did for the first MACH Alliance conference in London.
Yeah.
But it's the right thing to do. Do the right thing even when nobody's watching, especially if people are watching. Because, here's a proof that it can be done. Yes, it is a little more effort, but it's possible. So
yeah, if you want better, you have to work harder. And I love what you gave us, the audience, some very easy things to just change. You don't have to be the one male in a room of 100 females to rewire your brain to understand this. Just do those very simple changes in how you conduct business, make decisions, even see the world.
And everyone can do that. It's not a manager thing, right? If you're on the events team, if you're the events manager and you're in charge of the agenda, just speak up and say, hey, I think we have an imbalance here. And many times just raising that concern or, pointing out that there is something that needs addressing is enough, because many people there's very little bad intentions, but there's a whole lot of, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Only good outcomes.
Yeah.
I love that. Jasmin, that's amazing. This talk was awesome. Love the mental models you've shared. Love hearing about Contentstack. Love hearing about the MACH Alliance and what you're doing in terms of gender equality, gender equity in business. There's a host of cheat codes that we pulled out. And how can folks hear more from you? Are there other places if they want to reach out or listen to you, consume more of your content and your message? How can they do that?
Thanks for asking. Well, the easiest way to get a good mix is follow me on LinkedIn. as lame as that sounds. And the great place to go is a podcast, because we have a podcast called People Changing Enterprises that is available on all platforms wherever you listen to your podcasts. And there we talk specifically with customers about how they went composable, but more importantly, how they made their mark. How did they bring about the change that they want to see in the world? So it's super, super inspirational. I always walk away inspired by how brave people are, how vulnerable they are, and how they actually go about doing what many people would find too hard even to try. So if you're looking for some inspiration on how to change an enterprise, how to be a great leader for your people, because that's tied together, then that's a fantastic podcast to listen to, and I host that one.
Awesome. We're going to have to put some links in the show notes here for folks to get that. Jasmin, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the pod and sharing all of your wisdom, experiences, and all your cheat codes.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.